Okay, so there is a debate going on in the UK at the moment, what I would describe as a retarded debate about the reintroduction of grammar schools. This all started when the permanent secretary for the Department of Education was accidentally, on purpose, I'm guessing, accidentally on purpose revealed a memo just sticking out of his folder, the exact part of the memo where they were talking about the reintroduction of grammar schools and repealing the legislation that banned the creation of new grammar schools. So now there's a big, serious, believe it or not, debate about reintroducing grammar schools in the UK. And this debate is completely retarded and pointless. I just watched a Channel 4 discussion program about new grammar schools. On this program they had a Tory politician who was in favour of introducing grammar schools. They had a current head teacher of a grammar school. They had a writer for The Economist, and they had a journalist from The Times. Okay, really, really broad range of views being shared. And I will tell you exactly why the whole debate is retarded and pointless. It's because there are 6 assumptions which everybody, and I mean everybody, are assuming, or that everybody believe to be true, or at least they're pretending they believe them to be true. I don't care, it could be on the right of the Conservative Party, a moderate Conservative, middle of the road Labour MP, could be a left winger, could be a Green, could be a Lib Dem, could be I don't care, anybody, it could be a young Trotskyite. Okay, anybody in England discussing this issue is making these 6 assumptions, and these are the assumptions. 1, schools are good for children. Okay, I'm going to go over these one by one in a minute, but let's just look at the 6 of them, and then I'll go over how I know they're assuming this and how these things are not true. So 1, schools are good for children. 2, schools are necessary. 3, poor people are poor because of a low quality of education. 4, exam results are the measure of a good school. 5, the goal of education is a well-trained workforce. 6, a successful student is one who gets a good job and is successful within the system. Right? All of these people are making these assumptions. Any part of the political spectrum, they're all making these assumptions. Right? Number 1, schools are good for children. And nobody ever questions that. Nobody ever talks about that. Nobody ever says, well, do we actually need schools? It's just assumed. No, so I know that's assumed because nobody ever asks that question. Okay, you know, it's never about and schools are necessary. There's no choice. You know, the discussion is always about parents choosing the best school for their child. Right? It's never. Some parents want to send their kid to grammar schools, some people are in favour of grammar schools, some people are against grammar schools, but it never ever talks about giving parents a choice of whether they should send their children to school or not. Right? It's assumed. It's assumed that sending your child to school is good, and it's assumed that it's necessary. You have to have schools. You've got to have schools. It's just a question of what kind of schools. 3, poor people are poor because of a low quality of education. Right? Poor is always the measure that they use when they talk about education. They use the measure of free school meals. Okay, the poorest people who are getting free school meals. They talk about the low number of children who are getting free school meals in grammar schools, which is proof that the poor people are not getting into the grammar schools, okay? And this is supposed to be a problem, okay? And then we want a meritocracy. The government is talking about, we want a meritocracy. Theresa May wants a meritocracy where all the bright people, all the bright children, even if they are from, this is another phrase they use, underprivileged backgrounds, right? If they're poor or underprivileged, okay, which means poor, right? We need to help them to get a good education, okay, so they can not be poor, right? Which is saying that they think that poor people are poor because of the low quality of their education. Exam results, when they compare grammar schools to other schools, they always talk about exam results. Exam results are much better in grammar schools, which means they're better schools. 5, it's always, the goal of education is always assumed to be well-trained workforce. And 6 is the other side of that coin. A successful student is one who gets a good job and is successful within the system. Right? We need to help children, we need to give them a good education so they can get a good job. Right? That's connected to the whole idea that poor people are poor because they didn't get a good education. So we need to help people, all people, have a good education so they can get a good job. Nobody ever talks about the goal of education being anything other than that. You never hear people talking about the goal of education to create a free mind, or to make somebody happy, or to make somebody creative, or to make somebody into a strong moral person who will go out and sacrifice themselves to try and make the world a better place, and it will help other people. No, it's always the goal of education is well-trained workforce. That's what we want. And this guy on the Channel 4 program, the Tory politician, he said it. He used those words, a well-trained workforce, because otherwise other Japanese, the Americans, the Germans are not going to come and invest in our country because we don't have a good, well-trained workforce. Okay, it's not nothing about creating a well-rounded, happy person, a morally adjusted person who's going to go out into the world and do good works and be happy. Never mention it. It's always about getting a good job. Right, so I don't believe any of these things are true. I mean, they may be true in some ways, but they're not universally true. Schools are not universally good for children. Right? Some children have a horrible time at school. Schools are not necessary. Many parents teach their own children. Many children go through their education without ever going to school and become very well-educated people. Poor people are not poor because of a low quality of education. Poor people are poor because they're of injustices in society and greed from the rich elites and from the banking system, which is designed to keep people poor. Exam results are not the measure of a good school. Exam results are the measure of how well the children are able to memorize and regurgitate a curriculum. That's all it is. Nothing to do with good education. The goal of education is not a well-trained workforce. The goal of education is to create free-thinking people who can go out into the world, find out what's really going on, and thus become free. And a successful student is somebody who is able to see through the lies and the bullshit that is thrown at them from everybody in their entire life, and to find a way, an individual way, to live their life in a way that which satisfies them and gives them meaning, and how they're able to make, in that way, able to make the world a better place. So finally, I would say, where in this debate, this retarded debate, are these views being put forward? Right? Who in this debate, in these TV studio debates and in Parliament and all the other places, who is putting forward the idea that maybe schools aren't good? Maybe we should look at that assumption, that we do need schools to begin with. putting forward the view that, maybe, some parents could start teaching their own children, and maybe they don't need schools. Right? Who's putting forward the idea that poor people are poor because they're being exploited by the rich? Right? Who's putting forward the idea that exam results are not the best measure of whether a school is good or not? Who is putting forward the idea that the goal of education should be free-thinking people? Who is putting forward the idea that a successful student, or the success of a student, doesn't have to be measured by how much money they earn? Right? Who is putting forward these points of view? I'll tell you who's putting forward these points of view. No one is putting forward these points of view in this debate. Okay? Grammar schools, not grammar schools, I know your assumptions are all so wrong. And look at these assumptions, right? Everyone makes these assumptions, right? There's as what David Icke says, a postage stamp consensus on the issues, right? They're just arguing about whether you should have grammar schools or not. It's such small fry compared to what they all agree on. We've got to have schools. Schools are good for children. We've got to help poor people by giving them a good education. We need to check the exam results. Good schools have good exam results, and we need a well-trained workforce. And if you're successful at school, then you get a good job and have lots of money. That's what they all believe. They all believe that to be true. Every single one of them. No one is offering an alternative point of view in this debate. So that's why I'm saying this is a retarded debate.